afternoon, everyone. This is the Administrative Committee of the Moscow City Council. This is April 9th. To my left is Art Bedke.
No, I'm to your right.
I'm sorry, looking right, saying left. To my right is the sharp Art Bedke, and to my left is Ann Zabala, who is as sharp, only not as snarky. Let's begin our agenda with the approval of the Administrative Committee minutes from March 26th.
Good by me.
Yep, same.
Okay, awesome. We'll go ahead and approve those, Gary.
Thank you.
Second item is Guiding Principles of Affordable Housing Resolution. Ryan Cash, come up and I see Randy Bokel along with him.
I am here.
Right
yes.
on.
Alive and present.
Excellent.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. So the premise for the guiding principles of affordable housing were first introduced and talked about in 2015, officially on minutes in 2016. And so there's been a larger push. We have clear direction from our fair housing guidelines and how it's dictated within our city code. We have the Moscow Affordable Housing Trust that deals with the affordable housing aspect of that. But after many discussions with our commissioners for the Fair and Affordable Housing Commission, they felt it was important to have some identifying features, some guidelines for affordable housing that they can basically have the city's buy-in on. And so over the course of over a year, I'd want to say over the course of 18 months roughly.
At least. Yes.
We've slowly adapted and evolved this process. So
Okay.
Essentially that's the premise for this resolution. And I know that we have a more articulated speaker here than myself, Randy Bokel, but he can talk about some of those specifics as far as how the commission come up to those conclusions and the importance behind it as well. So Randy?
Excellent.
Yes, well, thank you very much for your time today. As Ryan was saying, this has been a long process arriving at this. I think, Art, you were on our commission here a few years ago when we first started the conversation, and it really stemmed out of the analysis of impediments to fair housing a few years ago, where a number of the impediments really were all about affordability. So we took a lot of time and just kind of dwelt on the concept of affordability and looking at other communities around the country and what other communities are doing. And we just determined that even though we can't do anything that puts any real bite into anything, we wanted to try to define the character of the city of Moscow, who we are, who do we strive to be. And we are a very open and welcoming community, and we are of the mind where all people count. So as affordable housing is a necessity that every single human life needs, we settled on all of these specific items on here, starting out with housing. Affordable housing is a human right, just a basic right. We all have this need to have that. The community needs to have affordable housing for employers to have a basis to draw employees from. It's all just pretty common sense to us. And if we can just really have this character that we strive to be and continue to strive to be, and sometimes we have to look at the written word to remind ourselves that this is who we are. It just kind of helps shape us, I think, and gives us some goals to continue to strive towards. Not that we are not these things already, but this is just putting it down into a hard black and white written word that we can identify by this.
Such important work that you commissions do. Do you have any questions at all?
No, just comments that I was glad to see the profit and nonprofit community called out by name as being potential partners with the city to provide some affordable housing. Mm-hmm. And also, I was really encouraged when I saw the called out specifically was the geographic dispersion, so that all the affordable housing isn't crammed into one specific area of town, but it's out integrated with the rest of the community, and so I was really happy to see that part too. And you're right, I think having it in black and white in the form of a resolution as a document within the city to call out our aspirations is a very good thing to have. So I really appreciate this.
Thank you for your comments.
Want to make any comments, or?
No, nothing to add. I think
Okay.
Art summed it up very nicely.
I think it's also a pretty good statement from an economic development standpoint to see this kind of a document housed within a city, because it is a commitment to having the affordable housing. If a business comes to Moscow and they're going to hire employees or bring employees in, you have to have a place for them to live.
Right.
So I just think it's very important and very critical. So
Thank you.
I appreciate the work very much.
So for not having teeth, I think it's a pretty good document.
Okay.
Shall we go ahead and approve it then, team?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so we recommend approval, and do we want to put it on consent, or would you like to talk
Well,
about
it's a
this? Oh, it's a
resolution.
resolution, we can't.
We
Okay.
can. Actually, resolutions you can, ordinances you cannot.
Oh,
So, but I agree, you probably want
think
to
it'd
put
be
this
good.
out in front of everybody.
I think it'd be good. One more council meeting for you.
And actually, I am already scheduled to be out of town next week, but Casey
clever.
Holcomb, the
Excellent.
vice chair, is going to be there in my place. so.
Excellent.
And,
Okay.
and she's a very eloquent speaker
Good.
Thank you.
and enthusiastic.
Well, thank you both
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks for the hard work.
Thank you.
Okay, our third item is, everybody gets up and leaves. Amending Moscow City Code Title 7, Chapter 7, relating to fire prevention. Mr. Williams.
Thanks, everyone. A little precursor to that, the committee has this information under the description, or do I need to read that?
I believe so.
Okay. The proposed amendment would adopt the International Fire Code 2015 edition with modifications that are consistent with those adopted by the Idaho State Fire Marshal for use in the state of Idaho. The code change is part of a 3-year code cycle. Revisions published by the International Code Council. Some proposed changes to the city code reflect the renumbering of sections in the 2015 IFC, as well as changes the building department has made to the International Building Code that mirror the IFC. Okay, I've created a short PowerPoint here, and I'll talk to you guys about this. All right, well, that's my book right there. Okay, the Idaho State Fire Marshal adopts the International Fire Code as a minimum standard for the entire state. The IFC sets forth minimum requirements such as maintaining life safety of building occupants, the protection of emergency responders, and limiting the damage to a building and its contents by fire. All right, many believe the IFC is a maintenance document, when in fact it's a design document. One cannot construct or erect a building without fire department access, water supply, and required fire protection systems. And that's a picture of a fire we had here a couple of years ago. So now that building has a sprinkler system in it. All right, road access. Fire department must have access to all structures, not only for firefighting, but also for EMS, very important. Water supply. Water supply is critical to firefighting operations.
That would be Walter Steed by that dumpster, by the way.
I miss him.
See him down there.
Yeah. Yeah, we had all of our equipment out there that day, and I don't know, about 50 people, something like that. It was, I think you were there too.
I was, watching you guys in action.
Yes, sir. All right, required fire protection systems. Fire protection systems are required in certain structures to protect the occupants, reduce the fire hazards within, and assist firefighters with suppression and control of fire. And on the left is a sprinkler riser. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that before, but that's the mechanism that gets the water to the sprinkler system through a lot of complicated valves and switches, and electrical components. And the right-hand side is a fire alarm panel. That's what we go reset every so often because of false alarms, but they're very much needed to alert the occupants if there's a fire. All right, significant changes to the IFC. Here's some examples of significant changes to the IFC you may be interested in seeing around our community. And this is just a few of the things that's brought forth in the fire code. First thing I've got up there is carbon dioxide systems. They're used in beverage dispensing, and they went now from small containers in a lot of businesses to large containers to save money, easier to deal with because they can go with like 100 or 200 pounds of carbon dioxide. But the section in the code requires that the CO2 systems are installed to be provided with either ventilation or emergency alarm system. The hazard associated with these systems is that the heavier in air carbon dioxide may accumulate and displace oxygen, creating an asphyxiation hazard. Many restaurants are using systems that contain more than 100 pounds of CO2. So if this was ruptured or released where it's not supposed to, you couldn't breathe. So that's very important. Commercial cooking appliances, we deal with this on a regular basis, myself and the building department. What you're seeing there is a valve and a hose, and this requirement is intended to end the practice of replacing listed flexible piping with residential flexible piping on commercial cooking stoves. Residential flexible piping is more easily damaged when the cooking equipment is moved for cleaning, which we hope is once or twice a week, so that stuff's moving around frequently, thus causing a fire safety problem or gas leaks, which could be even worse. All right, hyperbaric facilities. This section provides for the maintenance requirements so that such facilities continue to operate safely. The standard provides detailed responsibilities for testing and inspecting these facilities, such as requirements for an on-site hyperbaric safety director and for training. The section of the code gives the fire inspector the ability to ensure records are maintained and inspected as per the guidelines of NFPA 99, the Healthcare Facilities Code. And you guys probably know what a hyperbaric chamber is used for. Okay, good.
Can I stop you there and ask a
Sure.
question? Does this change to the code necessitate a safety director position? Does that create that position?
It gives the fire inspector, which we have a full-time fire inspector,
Right.
the ability to ensure records are maintained, and it does require for an on-site hyperbaric safety director.
Okay, so it
So,
does dictate.
and I think that's been there
Okay.
been in place. They just put it down on paper, so.
Okay.
And I know that Gritman has got that in place now, so we've been over and visited their facility. All right, solar photovoltaic power systems. If you look around town, we're getting more and more of that. There's an ever-increasing demand for alternative power sources, which brings hazard to confront emergency responders. The greatest danger facing emergency responders operating in the proximity to solar energy collection systems is the lack of knowledge needed to operate safely around these systems. Some of the potential hazard associated with the PV systems are tripping hazard and falls for firefighters operating on the roof, earlier roof collapse due to added dead load and electric shock. And like I said, again, they're becoming quite popular here in town. We're getting them on private residence, and we're able to, with the fire code, make adjustments so they're not completely covering the roof. And if we have to get on the roof, we can get up there and perform roof operations, so. All right, by adopting the 2015 IFC with its significant changes, the City of Moscow will provide a total approach of controlling hazards in all buildings and sites, regardless of the hazards being indoors or outdoors. Questions?
Art or Ann?
I've got just a little one. Some of them One of the sections talks about adopting various appendices of the fire code. But it starts at Appendix I and then Appendix K. And does that mean we've already adopted A through H, or?
Yes, what we do, the state fire marshal does not adopt all the appendices. So if we feel it necessary that there are appendices that they do not adopt, then we specifically adopt those. So if the state fire marshal adopted, then we have adopted them. But if there's anything they didn't, then, if that makes sense.
Oh, so
Yeah.
these are kind of in addition to the others.
Right,
We
and
also are taking these guys on.
Yeah, I brought the appendices here with me that, the three that they didn't, but we're adopting.
I and K.
H, yeah, H, I, and K, oops. Yeah, hazardous materials management plans. That's important when you have a lot of hazardous materials on site, so it makes the business come up with a reasonable way to deal with any spills, any hazardous material spills, makes them aware of the MSDS sheets that are required. So if first responders come, they can get these documents from them so they know what they're dealing with. So I feel that's very important. Then fire protection systems, non-compliant, and the construction requirements for existing ambulatory care facilities were two other. So, and if you guys would like copies of these, or.
Not really, I was just interested in the kind of discontinuity of alphabet.
Oh,
So-
yeah. Well, if, let's see here. Just trying to see the ones that,
Gary?
It is a situation where the state fire marshal adopts or promotes adoption of the current IFC. As you can see, it's a 2015 document. It's taken some time for them to review it, get it out. It was last March, I believe, that it was adopted by the state through the Idaho Administrative Procedures Act, IDAPA, and then it's given to the local jurisdictions to go ahead and adopt it. We cannot adopt a fire code or any state adopted code that is more lenient than that adopted by the state. In other words, the state fire marshal will look at the IFC, they will determine, well, that's something that we want to leave subject to local option. If you have a place that doesn't have hazardous materials, for instance, they may not want to adopt that, so they don't want to put a bunch of regulations on somebody that they're not going to use it. So by the city adopting those appendices, they in fact are becoming more restrictive from the state, which is allowed. State has not preempted this as much as they've said the IFC is preemption to an extent, although we have certain leeway there as well. If we try, or if we desire to be more restrictive, we can do that. But those appendices are things that they left open to the local jurisdictions to be able to do.
one of the appendices we didn't adopt was high-rise buildings retroactive automatic sprinkler requirements. You know,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, refitting Theophilus Tower would be,
And that's not under our jurisdiction, that's under that of the state fire marshal anyway.
correct. So,
And are we only allowed to adopt the appendices put out by the IFC, the state? If-
well, the
or-
appendices are in the IFC, and the state adopts certain appendices,
Okay.
and then the chief and I will go through the fire code and see if there's any of the appendices the state did not adopt that we want to for our local jurisdiction.
And that's all we choose from then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I jumped on top of you, I'm sorry.
oh, I was done.
Oh, you were done?
Yeah.
Ann, do you have any questions? Okay, well, I think I'm in favor of this. I think I should recommend approval of the proposed amendments.
Yes, you're here.
Okay, and we can put that on consent, sir?
This is an ordinance. We're changing the
Okay.
fire code ordinance, so
Okay.
it will have to go regular as well.
All right. Looks like you get to come to council next week.
Great. Looking forward to that.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you,
All right,
Joe.
thank you.
Good stuff.
Okay, that is our last item on our regular agenda. Shall we adjourn?
We should.
Okay, thank you.